Greetings, citizens. Hey you beautiful creepy human being you. Welcome to my channel and welcome to today's true crime episode. I am so happy that you are here. I am so happy that somehow in all of this that we're forced to deal with on the day-to-day, today, you and I were able to find each other on this crazy little planet that we call home. My name is Brittany or BRATTERSTEIN, whichever you prefer, and today we're going to be discussing the murder of 49-year-old Gloria Gary at the hands of a truly terrifying young man who I believe was a ticking time bomb waiting to commit a lot of really horrible crimes. But before we get started, if you have not yet had the pleasure, please make sure to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell. I put out a new video every single week, sometimes 2 a week, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you, specifically you, but I can only do that if you join the Brat Pack and become one of us. Now, before we get into the details of today's case, I first need to say a big thank you to the sponsor of today's video, and that is Ana Luisa Jewelry. If you've been here a while, you know I love Ana Luisa Jewelry. All the earrings that I wear in literally all of my videos, wait, boom, right there, are all Ana Luisa Jewelry pieces. So Ana Luisa Jewelry is a jewelry company. Duh. And they create high quality pieces at affordable prices. Jewelry that is long lasting. It doesn't like tarnish easily because that is the worst. All of Ana Luisa's pieces go through strength and humidity testing to make sure that they're going to last. They stay shiny. It's jewelry that we're going to love today, we're going to love tomorrow, and most importantly, it doesn't break the bank because I don't know about you, but in this economy, that is key. Ana Luisa's pieces are a excellent and affordable way to, treat yourself and elevate your everyday, or to treat myself and elevate my everyday with pieces that start as low as $39, and they have free and speedy shipping all over the US and crazy affordable shipping everywhere else, like all over the world. So today I have 3 different pieces that I want to show you to maybe give you some ideas, or really what I'm most interested in is kind of just to show you what I'm into right now. So the first thing I want to show you here is the Onda Mini Silvers. These are super cute, and I have to wear them in my upper hole because I got some chunky earlobes and I did my piercing a little bit higher than the average bear, I believe. But I really like mixing metals because I feel like I have a neutral undertone. I feel like I've mentioned this before, and I just feel like these are super cute and super unique to go with my little chains that are my absolute favorites. The next one I have to show you are these hoops. These are the low medium in silver. And again, I'm on a silver thing, not all of them. The other one I have is gold. But I really like how the silver of this hoop looks next to my little sunshine one because, it's got the white in the center. I think that it's super cute. But the one that I have next, I think is my favorite of the 3. Okay, the last pair I have to show you here are the Rosalies, and these are the ones I'm most excited about. I've been wanting these a while. I'm so happy I finally have them because roses remind me of my best friend, and I like to do this thing where I wear jewelry that reminds me of people. That's why I have my C's that I got a while back for my son and my husband, and now I have my best friend, and now this really is an earful of love. So you know what? I think I'm just going to wear both of these for the rest of the video. Even though I usually do a hoop, I kind of like the little studs on the side. I just think they're really beautiful. I think I've shown that. But in addition to being beautiful and also affordable, they're also easy to shop from because they have super easy and free shipping on exchanges, and they have a 2-year warranty on all of their products. So if all of that sounds as good to you as it does to me, make sure to click the link in the top of my description box to let Ana Luisa know that it was I who sent you there. And enjoy #treating yourself. Treat yourself to one of the most adorable and long-lasting shiny pieces of jewelry that you'll ever love today. Now, I just want to say a big thank you to Ana Luisa Jewelry for partnering with me on today's video. It's sponsors like Ana Luisa Jewelry that make it possible for me to put out videos as consistently as I do. And a big thank you to you guys for always being so supportive of all of my sponsors. You rock. Don't ever change. Alright, now let's go ahead and get into this video. Now this video is on a case that was recommended to me by a member of the Brat Pack named Miss Angie. Hi Miss Angie, thank you Miss Angie. And this is a case that was local to her. It happened to a woman that was local to her area, a woman that she was acquainted with because Gloria and her friends would go into Angie's Pizza Place every Wednesday, either for lunch or dinner, I forget exactly which it was. But from reading about Gloria, that seemed to be very in her character to do. She was very scheduled in that way, right? So this is somebody Angie saw often, so it was a case that hit her a little differently than the average case would, obviously. And Angie, she said that she has recommended this case to several creators, but when I went and looked, nobody has covered this case. It's a case that hasn't been covered, so I had never heard about it. And once I started reading about it, it is horrific. It was a horrific act of violence, a random act of violence against a seemingly lovely woman by a young man who I truly believe, after reading about him, would have gone on, if he hadn't been caught, he would have gone on to do this again. I believe. Allegedly. Whatever. So today I'm going to tell you the entire story. I read all the things so that you do not have to, and at the end of this video I'm going to ask you a question of the day. I'm going to give it to you now so you can have it kicking around in your brain as we go through the details, and obviously I want you to answer once you have something to go on. But the question of the day for you to keep in your mind is this. Do you believe that this actually was totally random? Like, do you believe that there was no stalking done beforehand? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below after we go through the details of this case. And now with all that said, come gather around and let me tell you the story of the disappearance and murder of Gloria Gary. Our story today begins with a traffic stop of sorts, and this is on a stretch of rural highway in northern Utah. Basically what happened here is a young man had been driving a red Honda on I-80 when he ran out of gas. So he was stuck on the side of the road, and a passerby, a good Samaritan if you will, saw the car on the side of the road and thought, this car is stuck, clearly they're not moving, and you're out in the middle of literally nowhere. I guess this was when they say rural, they meant rural, and they were worried that this person might not get the assistance they needed, so they called the cops so that maybe the cops could help a brother out. So with that, an officer was dispatched, and when he arrived at mile marker 65, he saw that yes, there was a red Honda stuck on the side of the road. And he immediately called the license plate in and gave all the information over dispatch, which I believe is like common practice, and then got out of his car to go and investigate what was going on with the Honda. As the officer got out of his car to go and investigate, a young white man, got out of the car of the Honda, right? Cool. With a gas can to, meet with the officer and see what's going on. And I say young man, but really you could say boy, because though he was of age, he looked incredibly young. So the cop asks him, like, what's going on here, sir? And the guy tells him, like, I was driving, I ran out of gas, and I don't have any money to get any more gas, so I've just been kind of sitting here chilling, not killing. And that's what's going on. So while the cop is there talking to the guy, finding out what's going on, he gets word over the radio that this car that he's called in belongs to a missing endangered person. And seeing as the person that was missing was not a young man, and this young man was alone, that was concerning. Now you may be shocked here, real Shyamalan twist, but it turns out this car did not belong to a young man. This car actually belonged to a woman, 49-year-old Gloria Gary, who had gone missing had been reported missing days prior, 2 states away in Des Moines, Iowa. So this young man was taken in to be interviewed, and this young man, by the way, was 22-year-old Kyle Alexander Jepson. And from speaking to him, they learned that Gloria was not missing. She was dead. Kyle had murdered her and hid her body in her own house, which was insane because people had been in Gloria's house several times. People had been in and out ever since she went missing, but nobody had seen her because he had hid her body so well. So now let's go back a little bit. Let's talk about Gloria. Let's talk about her disappearance. Let's talk about what Kyle says happened, which is absolutely horrifying. And let's talk about Kyle's history a little bit because it seems that he had some proclivities. It really seems that this man, was bursting at the seams with something dark that was inside of him during the time leading up to Gloria's disappearance. So it's January 2017, January 5th to be exact, when Gloria Gary was reported missing because she had not been in contact with anyone she knew. No family, no friends, no coworkers for days. I guess she left work on the 3rd at about 6 p.m. She went and she picked up a pizza from Pizza Hut, I believe, and then she just vanished. She didn't show up for work the next day, which was the 4th. She worked at a company called Berkeley Technologist Services that was in Urbandale. And not only did she not show up for work, but she didn't call either. And then she proceeded to miss a regularly scheduled dinner that she had with her dad and sister that same evening. It was something that they did all the time. It was very routine, and she didn't show up. So when Gloria hadn't shown up for work, her employer contacted her sister, and they were like, hey, what's going on? Gloria's missing. She hasn't showed up for work. She didn't call, nothing. Do you know what may be going on? And her sister's like, no, I actually have no idea. And now her sister knows that not only did Gloria not show up for dinner, which was already weird, but now she hasn't shown up for work and she hasn't called. And immediately her family was incredibly concerned. None of it made sense. It was very weird for her family because they said that Gloria was very predictable, organized, and responsible. She lived alone and she didn't have any kids, so there wasn't the unpredictability that can sometimes come with, other people existing in your home. And she had a very consistent schedule. She would always have dinner with her dad on some evenings, which she had missed, and she would have dinner with her friends certain nights at Angie's Pizza Place. She was just very routine. She was just not the type of woman to miss anything that had been marked out on her calendar unless she was sick or it was an emergency. And if that had been the case, if she had been sick or there was an emergency, she would have reached out to someone. She would never just leave, and there were no indications even that she had been planning on leaving. She was just gone, and she hadn't reached out to anyone, and everyone who was calling her, all of those calls were going right to voicemail. So alarm bells were just going off, because in addition to seeing her family and being routine in that way, she also talked to them regularly because she was very loved. So her family, which was like her father, she had 2 sisters, she had a brother-in-law, niece, nephew, they were all freaking out. Gloria's brother-in-law, Scott, who was basically, from all that I can see, the spokesperson for the family, because I can only imagine how difficult this would be for everybody in her family. I know her father, for example, couldn't even go to the trial once the trial started because he couldn't be in the same room with his daughter's killer. So Scott was the spokesperson, though he did have a hard time himself because in a lot of his interviews, as he spoke, he got very choked up and started to cry. But during this time, he made a statement where he said, quote, "It's a very atypical behavior. It's not something that has ever happened before. Gloria has always been very rock solid and reliable." He and Gloria's sister both said that they immediately were very worried and just knew that something terrible had happened because it was just that out of the ordinary for her. And so, of course, she was reported missing and her house was searched, but she was gone and her car was gone. So with that, police put out a statement asking for the public to be vigilant, to be on the lookout, to come forward to police if they had any information on her disappearance or if they had seen her car. Gloria was described by police as being a white female standing at 5'5" and weighing 110 pounds with black hair and brown eyes. She wore glasses and was last seen wearing a long dark sweater and slacks. They also described her car so people could look for that as well, and they described it as a two-door red 2008 Honda Civic bearing the Iowa license plate of ABG 397 and said that the car was also missing, so please watch out for it, and they were asking anyone with any information to call the local police department immediately. In the meantime, her family turned to social media because they wanted to, get her story and get her face out there. They wanted to do everything they could and cover all their bases and get like a super wide net out there because they had no idea what happened. They had no idea where to start, and we all know how effective social media can be at getting the word out there for people. Scott and the rest of Gloria's family also, set up canvassing and made a bunch of flyers. They had everybody meet on January 8th after she disappeared at a Kinko's, so that they could, set everything up and get everybody out there and have everything organized. They made an email and a Facebook page so that anyone who had any information on Gloria or her car knew exactly where to reach out if maybe they didn't want to speak directly to police. Now, you remember how I said a bolo was put out on Gloria and her car? Well, this was very effective. It did not take long for this to be very effective because just days later, Gloria's car was spotted, and it was spotted in southern Utah in a place specifically called Parowan City. I believe is how you say it. Parowan City. Apparently what had happened here was at about 12:45 p.m. a local cop was driving along doing their normal patrol when they saw a red Honda Civic that stuck out to them. So they took down the license plate number, they put it in their system, and they're driving along when the report comes back and he or she, it could have been a lady cop, they saw that the car that they saw was registered to a missing and endangered person. So in seeing that, he swooped his ass, they swooped their ass around, drove back, and by the time they got there, the Honda was gone. Which sounds pretty hopeless, I'm not gonna lie, but fortunately it was not, because the car had been parked next to a store. And this was either a convenience store or a gas station, is what it looks like based on the images that we got. Well, not that we got, I was not involved, that the police got. And these images were got from surveillance, by the way, because this place had cameras. So when the driver of Gloria's car, Kyle, went into the store to either, buy something or use the bathroom, I think it's safe to say that he didn't get gas, as we know where the story began. Images were taken of him, and because they were taken, the cops were able to take these images and put them out to the public and be like, hey, this is a suspect or at least a person of interest that we're looking at or looking for in relation to the disappearance of Gloria Gary. The man in the images at the time was described as an adult white male with very distinctive markings on his arm that resembled either a glove or a tattoo or a combination of both, which you will see because I'm going to post a picture obviously while I'm telling you about it. Now, not only did they release a written description, but they also released the photos of him to their like social media page, right? The cops have Facebook pages and shit like that. So they put the photos out there for everybody to look. And now, because they knew that their suspect or person of interest had left the state, this became like a cross-country search for the person responsible for Gloria's disappearance. And now, man, with this news, her family's very worried. Like, they were already worried, obviously, but when they see the photos from this convenience store, they see that this man is alone. Gloria is nowhere to be found, and truth be told, Gloria didn't have any ties to Utah anyway, so there was no reason for her to be there. So overall, it wasn't looking good, and now this guy, this person who could have something to do with her disappearance, is in the wind. But he wouldn't be in the wind for long. The very next day, an arrest was made in Toole, T-O-O-E-L-E, County, Utah, which is in like northern or northwestern Utah. I looked at a map to confirm that I knew what I was talking about this time. So he definitely made some distance, right? Because he had been in southern Utah, now he's in northwestern Utah. He's driving. He's on I-80. You know what he does? He runs out of gas while driving Gloria's red Honda Civic. So he's on the side of the road, passing motorists, sees him. It's like, ooh, rural stretch of highway. Better call the cops. Homeboy might need some help. Now we're caught up. Which truly, quick question for you. Would you, as a passing motorist, have called the cops to get this person help? Like, is that a thing that you would do? Because let me tell you, anytime I have ever been on the freeway, I have seen a car broken down on the side of the freeway, and I can tell you that not a call has ever been made from my part or from my husband. And maybe it just has to do with where I'm from, being in Los Angeles, and there's like a million cars 24/7, and it's not rural, so like they will get some help. But I don't know, I guess in this area, like the cop who pulled him over, I believe, was the one who did it. Or it might have been like somebody else who was just doing the press conference, did make a statement, like come out and was like, it's actually really not uncommon at all in this area for calls like that to come in because of how rural it is. And then they said that it's possible that Kyle himself called in, though they don't think it's very likely considering the situation he was in, right? The circumstances here. Anyways, the officer is dispatched to the area, gets to mile marker 65, and sees that there is a car on the side of the road. Gloria's car. He can see from his vehicle that there's condensation on the windows of the car, like somebody had been in there a little while, and noted that there was like an orange and silver cover, like thing covering the passenger side window. The officer immediately called in the license plate number in case, shit went down during his interaction with this person, though, I think that's common practice anyway. Then he gets out of his car, Kyle gets out of his car, with the gas can, right? They have their conversation. Kyle gives him his whole spiel about running out of gas and being a broke-ass bitch, just like we discussed before. And the cop's like, okay, cool. What happened to your window? Because it's like broken and you have a thing over it. Excuse me, never mind. The cop didn't know at this point that the window was broken, just that there was a cover over it. But then Kyle showed him that the window was broken, and that's why he had a cover over it. And the cop asked him, like, okay, how'd your window get broken? And this is when Kyle told him, which is just like a weird story because I don't think that it's true. I guess it could be true, but it just seems like a weird thing to say regardless. He said that he had been in his car one day, because he's, it's his car right now, because they don't know yet that it's not. And he had a machete with him, and that he had been in a bad mood, so he started chopping at the dashboard of the car, and in doing so, broke the window. Which I was like, that's a story to tell. It just seems like an odd thing to say. Maybe it is true. I really don't know, but because there's nothing about this case that would lead me to believe that a machete was involved at all, just for clarity. But he then told the cop, like, don't worry, like, I don't have the machete right now. So with that, the cop's like, can I, like, pat you down to make sure you don't have weapons? Because, like, again, that's a weird story. He didn't say that, but I imagine that's what's going through his head. But he did ask if he could pat him down. He patted him down. He confirmed that Kyle didn't have any weapons, and he put him in the back of the police car. So while Kyle was sitting in the back seat of the car and they're kind of waiting, the officer gets word back that this car belongs to a missing and endangered person, and the missing and endangered person is not a young man like Kyle, and that Kyle's alone. So that's weird. So the cop asks him, like, hey, whose car is this? And tells him, like, we know that it's not your car. And Kyle's like, oh, this is my aunt's car. But then says that he can't remember his aunt's name and that he's drawing a blank. And the cop is like, huh, you can't remember your own aunt's name? And he's like, no, I cannot. And the cop's kind of like, that's weird. That's suspicious. So again, the cop asks him, whose car is this? And finally, Kyle admits that this car is stolen. So it's at this point that the cop actually handcuffs Kyle, because prior to this, he had just been like freeballing in the backseat of the police car with no issue. So he handcuffs him and he asks him like, okay, where did you steal this car from? Where does the owner of this car live? And Kyle tells the truth. He says, Des Moines. To which I have a question for you. Whom chose to spell Des Moines the way that it is spelled? Because in all of my research, I was like, why would somebody do that? Why do we, with the English language, do things like that? So at this point, Kyle is read his rights, and he sort of flip-flops on whether or not like he wants to talk or whether or not he wants an attorney. First, he's like, yeah, I will talk. Then he's like, actually, just kidding. I would like a lawyer. I have to imagine he was probably nervous because, one, he knew what he had done, and also because there was a warrant out for his arrest in Iowa for a seemingly unrelated burglary. He literally had a second-degree burglary warrant out on him for something that we will be discussing, as it is sort of related. And when the officer brings up this warrant, he claims that he had no idea it even existed. Which is possible considering, he dipped pretty quickly after committing his crime, after committing all the crimes that he committed. Anyways, the cop searches Gloria's car, and in doing so, he finds some things, like he finds Kyle's backpack, his clothes, some paint, and he's also talking to Kyle during this time, trying to, see if he can get information from him. Not really questioning him, but just trying to, see what could shake loose if he, shake the tree, see what falls out. And he tells Kyle, like, listen, police know that this isn't your car, this isn't your aunt's car. We know that, which, duh, he said it was stolen, but we do know that this car belongs to a missing and endangered person. And if you know anything about that, if you know where she may be or what may have happened to her, it really would be in your best interest to just tell the police, right? And Kyle does, it is effective on him. It is effective. It is an effective tactic to be used on Kyle, because Kyle's like, okay, yes, I did see her. I saw her inside her home. So with that, the cop's kind of like, interesting. But Kyle decides he doesn't want to talk anymore. And he's like, I'm done, like, talking to you. It's cool. And he's like, that's fine. Would you be more willing to talk if I brought in, like, an SBI agent? Not FBI. SBI, the State Bureau of Investigation agent. Right? And Kyle was like, listen, I don't know if I want to talk. I'm kind of new to all this. I haven't been arrested before. It's a bit weird. But then Kyle's like, you know what? I guess I'll just make it easier on everybody and just talk to you. And that's when Kyle said to the cop, quote, she's in her house. I took her life. Now, I cannot imagine being this cop, dude, like being out on patrol, doing your thing, a normal day, you go to help somebody stranded on the side of the road, and they confess a murder to you. That's wild. I know somebody who's a cop, and I'm like, dang, has this ever happened to you? I should ask them, to be honest. So the cop on the scene contacts the SBI, and calls start going back between Iowa and Utah with, honestly, the cops in Iowa were very, what's the word I'm looking for? They were they gave Utah their flowers, you know what I mean? Which we don't often see. A lot of times you see like dick measuring contests, but they didn't. They said that the officers in Utah were vital in helping solve Gloria's murder, and said specifically of the cop that pulled over Kyle, or not pulled him over, but met Kyle on the side of the road that day, quote, he was doing great police work. He was being very proactive, and that piece of information was probably what broke this for us. So from there, agents from the SBI, my mouth does not like that. Agents from the SBI came to the location where the local cop was with Kyle. They took the car. They took Kyle now to be interviewed specifically by them in like a, in a setting, because now he is a suspect in an Iowa homicide. Now, you may be shocked to hear this, but you also might not be, because I was and I wasn't. I was shocked because you don't always see this, but then I wasn't shocked because, one, this guy was so young. I mean, he's 22 years old, and he had already sort of confessed at the scene, right, that he had done something. But when Kyle Jepsen was interviewed by police, he gave a full confession. And his confession is terrifying, and it's terrifying because of just how random this murder was. He told police he didn't plan this, that he didn't plan this at all, that he didn't even choose Gloria or her house in advance. Nothing. He said he had just been walking down the street, her street, on January 3rd, 2017, when he saw her house. The house located at 3107 56th Street in the city's Merrill Hay neighborhood. He says he doesn't know why that particular house caught his attention, but it did. And he said that he wanted to go in that house and he was not going to leave. He says that he did. He went into that home and then he just waited to see who came home, having no idea who lived there and who would be returning to that house. And that right there, that is what rocks my shit. Because if he truly had no idea, broke into a totally random home, having no idea who'd be coming back, having no idea if the person who lived there was a big ass dude who was gonna rock his shit, or maybe it was that creepy fucking dude from the movie Don't Breathe. You just break into a random house with no idea what you're walking into. Your compulsion to do this is that strong. That is terrifying. But that's what he did. He broke into her home and he just waited there. And when Gloria came home that night with her pizza, having no idea what was going on, he attacked her. He pinned her to the ground and began, quote, choking her until she became unconscious and lifeless. He said he put his hands on her, strangled her, and she fell to the ground. And once he choked the life out of her and confirmed that she was dead, he proceeded to sexually assault her body. He said that he wasn't really having an out-of-body experience when he killed Gloria, but at the same time, he felt like his mind left him and nothing felt real. And he felt like he was watching it, but at the same time, he said it didn't feel like an out-of-body experience because he could feel everything and felt like he was in control of everything. It was very, very weird the way that he described it, but he said specifically of the murder he committed, quote, I just snapped. I knew that I didn't feel as bad as I should. I hadn't fully understood what I'd done. I don't know if I had a will. I just didn't want to go to jail. I didn't feel like it was the appropriate punishment, which is insane. Like, what do you, Kyle, feel like would be the appropriate punishment for a person who broke into a woman's house that he did not know, murdered her viciously, and then assaulted her body? What would be the proper punishment if not going to jail? Just let us know for our reference, because I feel like we all fucking disagree. He said then, after he did what he did, after he killed Gloria, he proceeded to just hang out in her house. He showered, he watched TV, he played on her phone. Apparently, I don't know if he used her Snapchat or if he downloaded Snapchat and put in his Snapchat, but he used her phone to send Snapchats to his friends. He said he sent pictures to like basically everyone he knew that day. And he said specifically of this quote, I sent a lot that night to almost everybody I knew. Some of my friends replied, some of them were concerned. I think people were concerned, I guess. They all showed it differently, I think. Which, that statement makes me wonder if maybe he told somebody what he did, right? Because why would they be concerned if he hadn't said what he did or sent some weird photos, you know what I mean? But I didn't see it expressly stated anywhere that he did. It's just like the observation I have from what I am reading. It makes sense to me, but just know that that's just like my opinion. But either way, he did this. Then he stayed in Gloria's house. And after he stayed there, as long as he was going to stay there, he stole $200 from Gloria. He stole her cell phone. He stole her car. And he went on the run. Now, after giving this confession, as I'm sure you can imagine, Kyle Alexander Jepson was arrested and he was transported to the Toole County Detention Center. Now, if you're like me, you may be wondering, like, okay, we know that he killed her. He said that he killed her, but she's missing. So where is she? And as I already alluded to a bit, she was literally inside her house the whole time. Even though her family, her friends, had been in that house a number of times over the days, he had hid her so like efficiently that no one had seen her for 9 days. And I'm just like, I do not see how that's possible. Not that he couldn't hide her, but that, you know, decomp, right? It has a very distinct scent and it just seems like it would have been noticed. That's what I was thinking. And I don't mean that in a crass way at all. I'm just like, I don't understand. And I guess it had just mostly been the family. Maybe that's why, because like the cops had been in, but they hadn't like searched because they didn't have a warrant at the time. And they said of this, because I was like, you couldn't just like go in with probable cause because of like somebody being missing. But they did come out and make a statement about this. So I'm sure other people were wondering that too, where they said, quote, "We have some legal restraints on how we move forward with these cases. Our detectives were doing the best work they could to make progress on that case." So that's what they said, that they just couldn't like, you know, legally go in and do a search, but now they could, because now that Kyle had given his confession, they had the probable cause to get a warrant to go in and do like a proper search. So once they were able to go in the home, they found her body. Well, they found a body. They couldn't say definitively that it was her, because obviously they would have to like send her out for an autopsy to confirm that this was her, but like they believed it was her, and they just said that she had been, quote, concealed well within the home, and they were kind of vague on what that meant, on like where she was hidden. And I'm so sorry, I can't tell you. I don't know where she was hidden. They said that she was just hidden well, and that the conditions of the home were not common. Now, they didn't straight up say hoarding, though that is the impression I got from reading the interviews. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way at all, because like hoarding is a real and recognized disorder that plenty of people suffer from. I had an aunt who suffered from a hoarding disorder. It's just a way to explain how she could have been hidden and not been found, is why I'm saying that perhaps it was a hoarding situation. So they had found the body, and it was positively identified as Gloria Gary, and nobody was surprised, right? Like everybody kind of knew that's what it was going to be, but obviously you got to do what you got to do. But police were like, this isn't the outcome anyone wanted, right? But it's the outcome they were expecting, because officers said that as soon as they started this investigation, started interviewing family, started interviewing friends, and seeing just how uncommon it would be for her to disappear, and especially to miss work, they said all the signs had been pointing to something terrible happening right from the beginning. They were just counting on the worst case scenario, and a worst case scenario in an area that like overall wasn't an area you would think this would happen. Like, not to say Des Moines wasn't like an unsafe area in that time, because apparently it was actually, which is wild. I guess I read that in 2017 there had been like the most murders, like a record high number of murders in Des Moines in 2017, and there hadn't been that many murders since like 1978, I think. So like 40 years. I guess there were even 3 murders in Des Moines just on the first day of the year. But according to neighbors, this particular neighborhood wasn't seen as like a dangerous place. They had like noticed violence in the metro area and saw that being more common. You know, they knew of shootouts and things like that, but not here, not in this neighborhood. And one neighbor said that, like, quote, clearly Des Moines is growing up and this is part of the pain, end quote, which is an interesting and sort of poetic way to describe, like, you know, the destruction of our humanity, essentially. With that, after Gloria's body was found, 22-year-old Kyle Alexander Jepson was charged with first-degree murder, first-degree robbery, and first-degree burglary, all in connection with Gloria's murder. And he was also charged with second-degree burglary in relation to that other crime I said he committed, which was in December, so right before Gloria was killed, which, you know, shows escalation. He was held on a $1 million cash bond, or it may have been $1,010,000, because I did see it reported that way as well. And that does seem too specific of a number to be incorrect, but who knows? Who was there? Not I. Now, as I'm sure you can imagine, Gloria's family was devastated, and they also had, something that I think shows just how good her family was and just how good the people she surrounded herself were, which shows how good she was, is that in addition to grieving Gloria's loss, they were also grieving for Kyle's family, which I think is very big of them, because they could and would totally be in their right to just be like, to like not give a fuck about them, you know what I mean? And to be like, what kind of person did you raise? How is this your fault? Which doesn't mean it is their fault, but they would be in their right to feel that way and to ask those questions, but they didn't, you know what I mean? And Gloria's brother-in-law, Scott, said of this, quote, "There are 2 tragedies here. I feel for his family. It's unimaginable what they're going through." Which, man, is true though. I can't imagine what it would be like to be a parent in that situation, to know that your son, your child, your baby, the baby you watched grow, the baby who you were in awe of every little thing they did and every achievement and every milestone, to know that they had grown up to do something like this, and to just wonder like where it all went so wrong. It just seems truly impossible. And his family they haven't really said anything. I didn't see a single interview from any of his family members. And I was able to find his mother's Facebook page and just kind of go back and see what she may have said around that time, because she was one to like kind of post online, but she didn't really say anything. She made one post, which would have been like right after he was arrested, but it was kind of vague. It wasn't even like her writing. It was like a photo with words that would be, could be seen as related to this. And all of the sentiment from people who knew her was just like hope and prayers for her family, not even for Kyle, for like the family that he's destroyed with doing this. That besides Gloria's, the family, his own family that he's destroyed by doing this, And it's just wild because like from looking at photos on his mom's Facebook page, it looks like Kyle had a good family, that he was a happy person. There's lots of group photos of them, and it seems like they did things together, and he's always like smiling, and just like it looks so normal. But we know that social media is a lie, and uncandid photos can be a lie, and clearly something was wrong. Clearly something was below the surface in this guy that just wasn't right. And anyways, I just thought that was big of Gloria's family and of her brother-in-law. He even said that like he's working on forgiving Kyle, that his kids don't have their favorite aunt, and that's like the biggest thing that he can't forgive, but that he is working on trying to forgive him, which, like, again, big man, because I don't think I could. It's just like, why? Why did he do this? It's so, I don't understand. Like, he was a 22-year-old kid and she was a 49-year-old like IT analyst. It's not like they knew each other. It's not like they ran in the same circles. She didn't frequent the places that he frequented. She literally went to work, came home, read books, minded her own business, and he came into her safe space and he killed her. And this just seemed to be like so out of character for those who knew Kyle, which obviously he was a good actor, right? He was able to hide darkness in him, but those who knew him say that this was just like totally out of the blue. They said that Kyle was a nice guy, a quirky guy who was like outspoken and charismatic and loved wrestling and making music and was always smiling. He was local to the area, having several jobs throughout his working years all around Beaverdale, which is reportedly where he had last lived, which was only 10 minutes away from Gloria's home, by the way. And what's wild is that one of the places that he worked, I think it was a bar, had hung Gloria's missing persons photo in the window because Gloria's family had asked, having no idea that their, prior employee was her murderer. His prior boss, who didn't want to be named, by the way, said that they were just in disbelief. They could not believe that Kyle could do something like this, and they knew him pretty well from him working there because, like, he worked there for a while, and I think even before that, his mother had worked there. But, for all the people who were shocked, well, not all the people, because there were some people that were shocked that just didn't give interviews, but for most of the people who were shocked that did give interviews, they said that they didn't really know Kyle anymore, right? That they had known him, but that he had sort of drifted and got more distant in the years since, finishing school or leaving these jobs, which I think could be seen as a normal thing, right? Because I feel like oftentimes when you leave a job or you leave school, you lose communication with people because you don't have that same like shared daily experience, which is ultimately what you actually bonded over. Even though your friendship felt so real, it was really real because you had like a shared experience and oftentimes trauma, right? So maybe it had to do with that, since he hadn't worked with these people or been to school with them for a while, but they just said that they didn't really know him anymore. So maybe it wasn't as out of character for them or for him now as it would have been when they knew him. There just wasn't really anything negative said about him, no warning signs. The worst thing I saw somebody say about him was like an old classmate who just said they couldn't get a read on him and thought he was ego-driven. That was it. But one thing that seemed to be the general tone across all of these interviews is that they were like, listen, maybe he was a great guy, maybe he was nice, maybe this was out of character, but something must have gone wrong with him, and if he did this, he needs to be punished to the fullest extent, and justice needs to be served. Which, you can be a great person, you can be cool, you can be great, you can have something go wrong, you can go down a bad path, and that can be true. And it seems like what's in him, I don't think was new. He's 22, he's pretty young. These are, when you find out like the other thing he did that we're going to get into, like there's something there. There's something in there that's not good. Not good. Not good. So people wanted justice served, right? And justice would kind of be served, but it would take a little bit of time because Kyle wasn't even sent back to Iowa until March of 2017. Because remember, Kyle was arrested in Utah, so they had him in a Utah jail while they were working on getting him extradited back to Iowa. And I'm not sure why it took so long. I'm not exactly sure how long it's supposed to take. I think it's like 45 days, something like that. So I don't know why it took so long or why it seemingly took so long, but I know that it was a point of conversation because Kyle's defense attorney even tried to file a motion to dismiss his charges due to it taking so long for him to get sent back to Iowa. And can you imagine if that had worked? If he had gotten off on a technicality after what he admitted to doing and after what we find out he did to another woman, if he had just been able to pull a freaking Kiefer Sutherland, an eye for an eye, and just be like, sorry. Like, no. But what his attorney was basically saying is that because of the fact that he was arrested on January 12th, and wasn't sent back to Iowa until March, his constitutional rights were being violated because he is entitled to a speedy trial and he wasn't getting that, essentially. Basically, he was saying that it took too much time for Kyle to be transported from Utah to Iowa, and his defense attorney called this time period a, quote, unnecessary delay that prevented Kyle from interacting with his lawyers and stopped him from getting a mental health evaluation that his attorney wanted him to get. And on that mental health evaluation note, the state, right? Yeah, the state. They responded to said motion and they were like, okay. You want to talk about this mental health evaluation? Well, riddle me this, brother. If you're saying it's our fault for not getting him back to Iowa right away so you could do this very important mental health evaluation, because you're saying it's so important that you're filing a motion to dismiss about it, then how come after we sent him back, you waited 5 months to even get that mental health evaluation? Right? So explain to us how it's our fault that was delayed. Make it make sense. They basically said that Kyle's rights were not violated by it taking so long for him to be sent back to Utah. And they said that they knew that Kyle hadn't gone that long without speaking to an attorney like his attorneys had said, because there was records that he had spoken to an attorney 5 days after being arrested while he was still in Utah. The whole thing was just dumb, and it was ineffective, by the way. Like, obviously the motion wasn't granted, but it was just one more thing for her family to have to endure, right? Like, I know the defense they have a job to do, and they do it with flair sometimes, but just another thing that their family had that her family had to deal with, and it's just like difficult. And her family did come out and make a statement about the, legal gymnastics that the defense was trying to pull, where they said, quote, "We understand trials are complicated. We try not to read too much into it. For us, nothing has changed. Gloria is missing from our lives. We loved her deeply. She was a vital part of our lives, and, well, they didn't say, and, I'm saying, and, but what they said was that they miss her every day." They were just saying that they, were thinking about Gloria and that they were waiting for justice, and, they got it? Question mark. I think they're satisfied. I don't know if I'm satisfied, but my opinion doesn't really matter. But in September of 2017, so the same year, so this went by really quick, because we see some trials, some cases that take forever. Like when my friend's trial happened, it took 10 years for their families to get justice. So we know it can take quite some time. But same year, 2017, he took a plea deal. Kyle took a plea deal. And this plea deal was complicated. Like the prosecutor wasn't sure they were going to give him a plea deal. It took like a month for them to come to the decision, because there were a lot of factors that they had to consider. And one of the big factors they were looking into is the fact that his crimes were sexually motivated. Both of his crimes were sexually motivated. So now let's talk about the other crime that he committed before he murdered Gloria, another crime that was considered when it came to making this plea deal. About a week before Kyle killed Gloria, he broke into another home, and this was the home of a woman named Alyssa, or Elisa. It's Alisa. And while she was out of her house that was located at the 2800 block of Holcomb Avenue, Kyle broke in. While in her home, he ate her food, he drank her wine, he undressed, and then he dressed in her clothes, specifically her underwear and her bra, complete with a woman's wig. So he dressed in her underwear, her bra, a woman's wig, and he hung out in her house and he waited for her to come home, which is giving such Dennis Rader vibes. When I read that, I was like, this is a baby BTK, like what the fuck? So when Elisa came home on December 29th at about 8:30 p.m., she found this guy, young guy, like 1920s, slim build, standing in her house in her bra, her underwear, and a wig, just waiting for her. And reasonably, she freaked the fuck out. And she told him, like, get the fuck out of my house. And surprisingly, he did. She gave him a second to, like, change out of her shit and to get himself together. But he did. He gave her back her stuff and he left. And right away, she called the cops. Once the police got there, she told them what happened. And she told them that she believed that this guy was her neighbor's son because she had recognized him. Like, once he took off the wig, she could see his haircut and she could see, like, who he was. And she told them that. Like, she told them, like, I think this is my neighbor's son. And she also told them that she was worried because though all of her items had been returned, her lighter fluid had been moved. And she knew that there had been reports of house fires in the area. But anyways, she believes that this is Kyle, and it must have been confirmed that yes, this was Kyle because a warrant for second-degree burglary was put out for his arrest, and that's the warrant that the cop that pulled him over in Utah for Gloria's murder saw, like, on the record when they ran, the license plate, found out it was Kyle, they found out he had a warrant. This is the warrant they were talking about. So now he's facing charges for, all the crimes. And he admitted that both instances were sexually motivated. So that was a big factor to consider when giving him a plea deal. And the prosecutor said that the fact that they were sexually motivated, which is unusual for burglary charges, enhanced some of the penalties of both the burglary and murder charges. So they needed to make sure that the plea agreement was, quote, intricately balanced, end quote, to ensure the safety of the community, but also, avoid trial and give Gloria's family justice. Because that was another one of the important factors that was considered. Of course, the sexually motivated aspect of the crime and the fact that they needed to, like, make sure the community was safe was incredibly important, but they also wanted to make sure that Gloria's family was considered. And reportedly they were. Reportedly they did agree with what the plea deal was. And, Gloria's brother-in-law did come out with a statement about this where he said, quote, I think we're all very relieved that we're not going to have to be dragged through a lengthy court process that will take many years to get through. Now, as you may recall, initially Kyle was charged with first-degree murder, first-degree robbery, and first-degree burglary in connection with Gloria's murder, and second-degree burglary in connection with what he did to Alyssa/Elisa. But since he took a plea deal, this was changed. The robbery and the first-degree burglary charges were dismissed, and he ended up pleading guilty to the second-degree murder of Gloria and was sentenced to a maximum sentence of 50 years for that crime and was given an additional 10 years for the burglary charge for when he broke into Alyssa's home. The judge also ordered that these sentences be ran consecutively, meaning that Kyle will have to serve at least 35 years before he is even eligible for parole. And when/if Kyle is ever, released, he will also have to register, be a Iowa sex offender, right? He'll have to register as a sex offender in Iowa for the rest of his life. And another thing, as part of his required lifetime registration as that sex offender, he may also be subject to civil commitment when his prison sentence ends, which I had never heard of civil commitment, but apparently it's a, quote, post-sentence institutional detention of an offender with the intention of preventing further offenses, end quote. The prosecutor said that little note about the civil commitment thing, that being part of the plea deal, was vital for them. He said that if they hadn't have been able to add that on, that they probably wouldn't have made the plea agreement at all, in the first place. And they said specifically of this, quote, if it had just been do a 35-year mandatory minimum in prison, and if he's likely to be paroled after 35 years, we probably would not have reached that. The fact that these were sexually motivated offenses was an important part of the plea agreement for us. So they were like, listen, 35 years, that's cool, but that's not long enough, and I need it to at least be an option that afterwards he's going to be institutionalized because he's a sexual danger. And I think that seems like that should be the case more often, doesn't it? If you haven't gotten the help you need in jail, we need to make sure that you're not going to do shit like this. I don't know. I hadn't heard about that. And I'm like, why isn't that always a thing? But I'm sure there's a lot of reasons why it's not always a thing that are related to money and resources, honestly. Members of Gloria's family, as well as Elisa, the woman whose house he broke into first, gave victim impact statements at his hearing, and I cannot imagine how this woman feels. You know what I mean? I did read that she said that she had moved out of her house, because she was scared for her and she was scared for her kids ever since he had broken in. And knowing he broke in and knowing a week later what he had gone on to do to Gloria, I cannot imagine how terrifying that would be for her, knowing that could have very easily been her. Scott, Gloria's brother-in-law, who, was the family spokesperson, he read several comments and statements from Gloria's family members, her friends, her co-workers, and everyone, man. All of them said she was kind and quiet, intelligent, loving, and loyal, the type of person who never had a harsh word for anyone. He said she was a wonderful person, an angel, and an actual saint. Her family said this was a tragic event that has left a lasting effect on all of her family, all of her friends. They said that, all of them, her father, her sisters, her brother, her brother-in-law, her niece, her nephew, all of them are victims. They were all victimized by what Kyle did. It was an unspeakable and unthinkable tragedy, and something that will always be with them, because Scott said, how dare he take the life of somebody so innocent? But Kyle did speak, he did try to explain himself, I guess you could say, and he gave a statement during his sentencing hearing where he said, quote, "Though it may seem that a lot of that may have happened in cold blood, the truth is I've been dealing with some schizophrenic and some spiritual demons that take control of myself." And after that, he started to cry, and it seemed like he had more to say, but after a couple of minutes of not being able to really get together, he told the judge that he was done talking. Now, I did not see anything reported that said he had schizophrenia. Nothing reportedly came out during his mental health evaluation. I did see that he told the judge he was receiving mental health care, but I didn't see anything that confirmed that he was struggling with anything like that. And her family just thinks that he's plain evil. Her brother-in-law said that he does not believe that Kyle is a normal human being. He sees him as a monster. After the court proceeding ended, her family just said that they are just happy that this is done, because this is just something that no one expects to ever have to go through, and that they're just glad to be able to put this part of this nightmare that is their life behind them. They're glad it's over. They said what Gloria went through is just unimaginable, but that they do believe that in this situation, justice was served. Her family said of this quote, "I think that we have the justice of knowing that Kyle Jepsen, the man responsible, the monster that is Kyle Jepsen, is behind bars and will be behind bars for sure for 35 years. And then her brother-in-law said he will be there at every parole hearing. He will be there until they have to wheel him in a gurney to make sure this guy stays behind bars as long as humanly possible. And I agree. I think he should be behind bars as long as possible, dude. It's wild. It was so random. He didn't know her at all, and that's terrifying. For a guy as young as he was to have something this dark bubbling below the surface, and for him to do these things to both Alyssa, and Gloria so close together, it shows that he had no impulse control, dude. And if he hadn't been caught, who knows what he would have gone on to do next, and how many people would have lost their lives at the hand of this guy. That's how I feel. But with that, my friends, is the story of the horrible murder of Gloria Gary. I hope you found my telling of this to be informative. I hope it made sense. And I just, of course, want to thank you for hanging out and remembering Gloria with me today. Now, considering everything I told you throughout this video, I want to revisit the question of the day. I actually have a few, and these are these questions. 1. Do you truly believe, I guess I just have 2. 1. Do you truly believe that this was random? Do you believe that he really just went into her house without knowing anything about her, that he didn't stalk her at all, that he didn't know it was just her? And 2, do you believe if he hadn't been caught, he would have gone on to do this to somebody else? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below, because I am curious to hear what you have to say. Now, before you leave, please don't forget to leave me a comment down below with what case you'd like to see me cover in the future. As this case shows, I like to look into the cases you guys suggest. I have a long list of cases, and whenever you leave a suggestion, I put your name next to it. So if I cover it, I can give you a shout out like I have here with Miss Angie. I, again, like looking into the cases you guys suggest, because they're often cases like this one that I've never heard of, and cases that need more coverage. And I know you're filled with great ideas and great taste, otherwise you would not be here. If you haven't already, please don't forget to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing the bell. I put out new videos every single week, sometimes 2 a week, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you, specifically you, but I can only do that if you join the Brat Pack and become one of us. One of us. One of us. One of us. And if you want to hang out more consistently, all my social media is listed down below, along with a link to my membership and a link to my merch store. I want to say one last thank you, of course, to Ana Luisa Jewelry for partnering with me on today's video. It's partners like Ana Luisa that make it possible for me to put out videos as consistently as I do. And a big thank you to you guys for always being so supportive of all of my sponsors. You rock, don't ever change. If you've been here this long, please let me know how many times you heard my husband cough or my baby cry, because when I tell you my house is again plagued by illness, I love it, I love it, I love it, I love it. I don't love it, but let me know if you heard it, because I'm sure you did. And now with all of that said, I just want to thank you for being here when you could literally be anywhere else in the world. That is tight. You are tight. Please stay safe and be a better person than you were yesterday, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.